My father was born in the East End of London on the 20th of July 1924 and grew up in the Canning Town area in the pre-war years. In many ways, although it was a very tough upbringing amongst the gangs and the poverty of those hard times, he remembered those years fondly. From an early age he displayed a natural talent for sports and played cricket as an all-rounder for East London. He also had a trial in his teens for West Ham and boxed in many a local club. War broke out when he was 15 years of age, and he joined up a year or so later, having been less than completely honest about his age. A short time after joining the Royal Marines, he read a notice asking for volunteers for duties of a hazardous nature, and, always being someone who loved a challenge, he signed up and shortly thereafter found himself in the 1st Commando. The next few years were to be very formative in his life. He took part in active service in some of the most difficult and dangerous landings, battles and campaigns of World War II. It started off with the landings at Dieppe in August 1942, where he was one of the very few to escape the battle relatively unscathed, despite having been landed on the main beach right in front of the casino, the very heart of the action. He subsequently took part in many seaborne landings and battles in such notable actions as Tamoli, Anzio and Comacchio in Italy, and the campaigns in Greece, Albania and Yugoslavia, oftentimes finding himself working behind enemy lines. Years later, whilst holidaying on the Greek island of Kefalonia, he drove into the island's capital, Argostoli, and only as he entered the town did he realise that he had actually been there before. At that time the island had merely been designated a number, and on that occasion he had seen it from the back of a jeep being driven at high speeds through the centre of the town while he manned a machine gun on the back. Towards the final years of the war he became an instructor at the commando training establishments in Achnacarry in Scotland, where, for a time, he assisted in the instruction of both British commandos and American Rangers. Again, years later, whilst on a golfing holiday in America, he met up with someone who had trained there as a ranger. Instead of the expected swapping of stories from those far-off times, they nearly swapped blows. My father subsequently told me that some of the very best battles of his war were fought against the Americans. At the end of the war, my father met a girl, Lillian Wotton, in an East End pub, fell in love and, a few months later, married. For all the ups and downs that followed, it was the start of 61 years of happy marriage. My father at first found the post-war years difficult, not easily settling to civilian life, and working his way through several jobs, trying to make ends meet in those difficult years. Eventually, he saw an advert asking for men who wanted to become firefighters. The idea of being in some kind of service and involved in events again appealed to him greatly, so he responded, applied, and was accepted into the London Fire Brigade. For the next 30 or so years, firefighting became his life, and again he found himself in the thick of the action. These were tough years, and sadly he came to know the feeling of losing comrades once again. Notably at the Smithfield fire in 1958, where men were lost in the maze of cellars beneath the market. He became a specialist in rescue work, manning the brigade's designated emergency and rescue tenders, and attended many an incident where his abilities assisted in saving several lives. As he rose through the ranks, he found himself involved in some of the most noticeable incidents in the brigade's history. In particular, one could mention the fire aboard the SS Paraguay Star in the Royal Albert Dock, where, although the boat was listing severely, the brigade officers remained aboard until they extinguished the fire at great risk to themselves. Again, he was involved with a difficult and dangerous rescue operation following the Moorgate tube disaster in February of 1975. The second and third carriages were wedged against each other, and my father and other rescuers had to clamber beneath those wedged carriages in order to conduct rescue operations from the first carriage. Finally, right at the end of his career, he was involved in firefighting operations following the Iranian embassy siege in 1980. As we watched the scene unfold live on TV at the time, my father said, "The phone is going to ring in any second." And sure enough, it did. Following his retirement from London Fire Brigade, he subsequently oversaw and lectured on safety issues at the St Thomas group of hospitals in London until he finally reached retirement age. My father took up golf in his later years and, although limited by problems with his legs, became a decent golfer. He enjoyed travelling, including several trips to the United States to play golf, for the sheer fun of travel. In his later years, he finally decided that he would enjoy going over old times once again, something he had resisted for a long time, and he joined the Royal Marine Commando Association. Despite his initial reservations, he very much enjoyed renewing old acquaintances, and his later years were punctuated by jaunts to reunions on the Isle of Wight, return trips to Dieppe, which he loved very much, and remembrance ceremonies at Norton Manor Commando Camp in Somerset. At the bar at such events, the advancing years would seem to drop away, and he would become once again that boisterous youth who had joined the commandos so many years before. Dieppe, in particular, became something of a favourite with my father. On his first trip back, many years after he had been set the impossible task of blowing up the dock gates, he returned to those same wooden gates and wrote 4 letters on a piece of paper, which he tucked between the slats of wood, smiled and walked away. The letters he wrote were B-A-N-G. It had taken over 50 years, but he had completed his mission. My father is survived by his wife, Lillian, and his 3 sons, Bill, George and David, who all, in their own way, miss him very much.